Well, a bucket binder is just a term that I made up, but it refers to a place to collect all the important documents that your family will need when you kick the bucket. So I'm trying to bring a little levity to a really kind of serious and not so happy topic, but I feel like if we can't laugh about it, what are we going to do?
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview thoughtful, inspiring, and influential guests who are changing the way we think about what is possible in our lives, especially as we age. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager, and I'd love to hear from you, my listeners. Leave me a comment on zestfulaging.com. Our music is courtesy of Judy Banker, a guest on Zestful Aging. Her CD Buffalo Motel is out now, and you can find out more about her on judybanker.com. Well, as always, I've got my little Jack Russell Sparky right by my side, taking his morning nap. So let's begin. We have a really great interview for you today. We're going to be speaking with Carrie Luteran, who's a professional organizer, speaker, and an interior designer based in upstate New York. She provides personalized organizing and design solutions for women navigating their big life changes. Hi, Carrie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Nicole. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
This is really interesting. I've seen a lot of people on social media talking about what to do with their important papers, and even this whole idea of, facing our mortality and knowing that we're going to be leaving our belongings and our directives with whoever's going to be taking care of that. Mm-hmm. And so you are really getting into doing these things called bucket binders.
Yes.
Tell me what a bucket binder is.
Well, a bucket binder is just a term that I made up, but it refers to a place to collect all the important documents that your family will need when you kick the bucket. So I'm trying to bring a little levity to a really kind of serious and not so happy topic, but I feel like if we can't laugh about it, what are we going to do?
Right. I guess I missed that.
Yeah.
I thought it meant like all your stuff in a bucket. So that's,
it has multiple meanings, I guess, however you want to interpret it.
I see. So when you kick the bucket, it has the same feel of Swedish death cleaning where, really preparing people and thinking ahead and saying, I don't want my loved ones to be running around struggling, trying to find my stuff.
Exactly. It's really all about making it easy for whoever is going to have to take care of things. And for anyone who's gone through this experience, having a loved one die and being in charge of that, that it's really a process and there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. And having the bucket binder in place just makes that process easier for that person.
And while you're grieving, right, you don't want to go walk to each bank and say, is my loved one's account in here while you're grieving?
Exactly. And whoever is going to be taking care of this is most likely the people that you love most in the world. Probably your closest family. And, why burden them with, this process being more difficult than it needs to be?
I see. It's a loving gesture.
Yeah, we can think about it as the author of, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning says, you can think about it like it's a gift you're giving those people who are going to be left after you're gone.
Mm-hmm. That has a very poetic feel to it. Right. So what got you interested in end-of-life issues?
Well, I went through this period in my life. I was kind of in my mid-20s. I was in my first real job because I went to college and grad school for many, many years. And I was kind of in my first real job, and I was working at a hospital on clinical research studies. I was working for a neurologist, and most of his research was on treatments for people who have ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who's familiar with the disease, it's really a brutal disease. Most people pass away within about 2 to 4 years from the onset of the diagnosis. And I was there for several years. So I had kind of a front row seat to a lot of people going through this process of, degrading through this disease. At that same time in my life, when I was working at that job, my father was also battling brain cancer. And, he went through treatments and surgery, and he actually passed away while I was working at that job. So I went through this period of a few years. I was fairly young, and I just felt like, I was kind of surrounded by death, literally. Mm-hmm. And, I guess looking back on that, I think like, wow, I'm glad that time is over, because it was really emotionally difficult. But it also demystified death for me a little bit. I saw that death really is just a part of life. And I also saw that talking about it with your family and preparing for it really makes it easier for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. And those lessons kind of stuck with me. And now that I work as an organizer, I'm kind of combining those things and thinking, how can people, being organized about this process, how can that kind of make the process easier? And really, I just want to like open up the conversation about this because I think it's so important.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've had conversations with people on the podcast and also in my family about the 5 wishes and going through those.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've used as well?
I have, and my mom has filled that out, and we've talked about it, and I think that that's a great tool for having the conversation with your family. And also, I like 5 wishes because it really is in everyday language, like it's easy to understand, and I think that's that just makes it a little bit easier to complete and to know exactly what you're deciding on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. It's very accessible, and you're just writing things about how you want it to look. And it's a strange process because you'd think it'd be, I don't know, some people are afraid to do this because they're afraid it's going to be like depressing, but I actually found it weirdly liberating. I don't know. What was your experience?
I feel the same way. I think it's a topic that's hard for us to talk about. It's hard for us to think about. But when you do it, there's kind of a lightness, like, oh, I've made these hard decisions, or I've thought this through, and now I feel a little less fearful about it because I kind of know. I know what I would like that to look like, and I've communicated that to the people who are going to be going through it with me. And I think it just, there's a certain kind of freedom with that.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about a couple different things, the practical aspects of leaving the paperwork, and we'll get into the categories in a moment, but leaving paperwork in order that, we all need. But you're also talking about facing death and thinking about your own mortality and what you want to do with your body, all these things after you die. Do you think that makes a difference in how we live if you're actually sitting down and thinking about your own death?
Oh, I think absolutely. And I think, even though it's something we don't do a great job of in our culture here in the States, I think that, keeping that in mind, it's not depressing, but it kind of lights a fire under us. Like, oh, I don't have unlimited time here. And I think, as I was talking before about, kind of being faced with mortality through my work and through the experience of losing my dad when I was fairly young, it really changed my perspective. And I think that can be the case for anyone who, goes through this decision-making process. And it's facing the fact that life is not, your time here is not infinite. So make sure you're doing what you want to be doing and really try to make the most of your life.
I think that's so important. And especially as we get older, it's very clear that most of our life is behind us. It kind of forces us to say, what do I prioritize? Because I don't have time for, I don't have time to waste.
Yes, exactly. And it puts things in perspective too, I think, with, it's inevitable, the annoyances of everyday life, but if you can kind of keep in mind, like, that really doesn't matter. Like, I was doing laundry last night and the dryer broke in the midst of all of that, and I had to figure out what to do. And I was really kind of frustrated in the moment. And then I was like, this really is unimportant. Even next week, I'm not even going to remember this. So let's not get too upset about it right now.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of wet clothes hanging around your place right now?
I actually made an impromptu trip to the laundromat. So,
I see. Okay.
But it was not my plan for the evening.
No, so. Right. I see. It's no secret that everyone's feeling pretty restless and unsettled right now. Our lives are upside down and the future is feeling pretty uncertain. But if you're anything like me, organizing my stuff can help me feel a little calmer. It's something I can do to help me feel a little more in control and in charge of my own life. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luteran. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical. It's realistic. The lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long, exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety. So being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. So tell us about, let's get back to the bucket binder. Tell us about the categories. I'm sure there's a lot of categories, but give us a little overview of what we might include in a binder for our loved ones, organizing our stuff.
Sure. And before I jump into that, I think it's important to note that this is so personal. Everyone's situation is different, financially and all of that. So, this is really about kind of looking at your own life and figuring out what is going to be important for you to include. But kind of the big categories, the first one I would say is financial, because this is often where, a lot of documentation needs to happen and where, the people in your life may be, taking over your bank accounts, or they may have benefits coming to them upon your death. So making sure that the documentation is there for them to go through that is important. So obviously, I would say with the financial documents, just letting people know where you have money and, how they can access it is the most important thing. So where are your bank accounts? What are your bank account numbers? What are all the credit cards that you have?
I see.
They're going to need to close all of those things out. And so for credit cards, I like to just take all of the cards that I have and make a photocopy of the front and the back, because usually the information number where they would need to call to cancel that out is included.
I see.
But yeah, identity theft of the dead is really a thing. So you don't want accounts to be left floating out there too long after a person is gone. So it's important to let people know what accounts you have so that they can make sure that they're taken care of. Any type of investments that you have, obviously life insurance policies, things like your auto and home insurance. Some of these things may need to be kept going depending on, if the home is going to be kept by the family or if they're going to sell it, but they will at least need all of that information. And then things like if you are receiving any financial benefits, maybe, through Social Security or through the military, your family will need to let these governing bodies know that you are gone and that those need to be closed out as well.
I see. I see. You don't want to keep getting those. The government doesn't like that. And they will. And once they figure it out, they will. If money has somehow been received after a person has died, they will need to, return that. So, in a case where maybe that money is getting auto deposited into an account, and then your family might be spending money out of that, that's something that they would need to know about. So that's not. Great point.
Yeah, They're not spending money that they don't actually have.
I see.
So really just taking a look at your whole financial picture, where, money is, and, letting them know where to find that. Because as you mentioned at the top, if they don't know what bank accounts you're using, they really have no other option other than to go from bank to bank and ask the question. And obviously that's not something you want to leave people to have to do.
I see. So those are some categories. Are there any other categories that people like to include?
Sure. So that's kind of the financial picture, but having your important documents, things like your birth certificate, Social Security card, passport, all of that. You might not want to keep it in your binder, and storage of the binder, I think is another important point to make. But you might want to keep a photocopy in the binder, and keep because I do recommend those type of important documents kept in like a fire safe of some sort in your home.
Okay.
So, or you could just have a list in the binder and let people know where to find that stuff. So again, they don't need to go digging through your file cabinet trying to find, your military records because they want to have a military funeral for you. I mean, you have to provide proof of that kind of stuff.
I see. There's just a lot of paperwork and administrative details.
There is, which is why, putting this binder together is kind of a process in and of itself in terms of thinking through all this. But I think it's definitely, time well spent. So any important documents like divorce papers or vehicle titles, your checkbooks, where to find that stuff. Those are things to include as well. Another category I would say is kind of your final wishes and arrangements. So we touched on this a little bit, but your healthcare proxy information, your will, a living will or advanced directive, like we had talked about, 5 wishes. And then some people do pre-plan their own funeral services, or they may have a burial plot or, place for their remains already set up. But obviously your family needs to know about that stuff. So keeping those records and, where you have already made those arrangements, having that information in the binder is important too.
I see. Do people leave personal notes sometimes in their binders?
Yeah, I think having maybe a category for personal things, if there's, if you want to write a letter to the people who are left, or if there's anything that, you feel it's important for them to know in your absence. If you want to leave specific items to people, I mean, you might have a will, but you also may just have kind of smaller, more personal items that you want, it's important that someone in your life gets. I read an article about a woman who actually had written a eulogy for her husband in the case that she may pass away first. She wanted to be able to speak as well about him. So I think there's a way of getting creative. Some people write their own obituaries. I mean, that sounds kind of funny, but
oh my goodness.
But why not?
That's
right?
You're really prepping there. You're thinking ahead.
And this is really taking it to the next level. But doing this ahead of time gives you the option of if these things are important to you. I have a good friend who is a local photographer, and one of her specialty areas is doing portraits. And a couple years ago, she had a woman contact her, and the woman was, like in her 80s and kind of outside of her. She usually photographs like business owners and stuff. And so she asked the woman, "Can I ask why you're getting your portraits done?" And she said, "Well, I don't want my high school picture in the paper when I die." And so,
wow.
She was having her obituary photo taken ahead of time.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's something.
It is. And I really kind of admired that, like to be accepting about, this is going to happen, and a picture is going to be put in the paper.
Oh my gosh.
And it gives you the option to make the decision. Like, I want this to look a certain way. So because I'm thinking ahead, I can have that happen the way I want it.
That's priceless. I was thinking too, if you have a pet, you might also want to put in, vet contact.
Absolutely,
and meds.
Yes. Yeah, I think a category for contact information for any important, people or services in your life. So obviously, your attorney and your financial advisor would be important people that your family will need to probably speak to. But also things like whoever takes care of your pets, or the people who mow your lawn, or are like around here where we live, we have a lot of snow, and most people have a snow removal service. If someone's going to be taking over your property, they are going to probably need to either keep those services going, or if there's going to be a home sale, they're going to need to let them know to stop those things. So again, just letting them know, all of that's happening, with your home is also really helpful.
Now, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but I can imagine that if you're in a partnership or a marriage or what have you, that one person might be more eager to do this than the other. And perhaps that person might be wanting to convince their partner that it's important, and maybe there's some resistance there. Do you have any advice about how to get your partner on board?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's, like when I work with folks who are decluttering and getting organized in their home, that's often the case where one person is, maybe more resistant to the process than the other. And in that case, I always say you have to kind of lead by example. You can't force someone else to do that. But in the case of, compiling your end of life paperwork and what your wishes are, this really is important, and it's really going to impact your partner in a major way. They are going to be the ones taking care of it, and they don't want to be burdened with it being a really difficult process. So I think if you can just open up that conversation in that way and say, if you go first, I'm going to be in charge of this. So there are some important things we need to discuss. And certainly not everyone is going to be, writing their own obituary or getting their photo taken or taking it to that level. But at least in terms of like the real practical financial aspects, I think that it's so important to have that conversation with your partner. And sometimes you just need to keep revisiting it. And maybe initially there's a lot of resistance, but you can kind of, over time, continue having the conversation. It's probably not going to be something you cover one time and you've discussed everything.
I see. So what are the logistics of this actual binder? Are you talking about just like a college 3-ring? And
I mean, it can be really the format is not as important. So, this can be as, basic as you want it to be. It could just be a 3-ring binder. I do most of my banking and stuff online, but I just print out a statement, maybe once or twice a year and hole punch it and stick it in there. It can really be that easy. For some people, you might not want the binder. You might do this in a filing cabinet and have a certain set of files that contains all this information. You could do it all in a box. The format is not as important as compiling things in one place and then also letting people know about it and letting them know where to find it. Obviously, you don't want to do all this work and then have them not even know that it exists.
You don't want it to be some kind of scavenger hunt to find this thing.
Exactly. So have the conversation, show them what it looks like, show them where you stored it. I have had people ask me about, is there any danger in having all of this information in one place on the off chance that like my home is broken into? But, that's something that we all have to decide on personally. But, I think this is something that no thief is going to be looking for this in your home. And it's probably going to be, just set on a bookshelf somewhere. And, I don't think it's really that risky to do this. All of this information is in your house somewhere anyway. So, and I actually know someone who works in, like disaster preparedness. And she actually mentioned, if you live in an area where you might have to evacuate your home quickly, having this type of binder or box or whatever of all your important information could be really useful in that situation as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You just
so
grab it and go.
Exactly. If you had to leave suddenly, you would have all of that information about all your accounts and everything in one place. So that we could think about it in terms of preparing for that too.
That sounds really important. It reminds me of this interview I did last year with a woman who founded something called the Coffin Club in New Zealand. And what they do is they decorate their coffins in very highly personalized. One person did Elvis Presley all over decoupage. And I wonder if there's room to sort of make this more fun. We talked about the levity of, the bucket binder. I mean, it could be a lovely kind of craft project that really expresses what your life was about and how you want to be remembered and actually, brings some art to it. I love that. I am a paper crafter myself. So yeah, the idea of this being kind of like a hybrid scrapbook, is really kind of cool. So yeah, I think there's a lot of personalization that could go into this process, and making it a little bit fun, maybe take some of the, depressing element out of it too. So I say whatever works, for people personally, and it can be very basic and straightforward, or it could be something that really is like a reflection of you and your personality. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that could be a lovely class, is to make this your art. This is sort of your final going away gift.
It really is. It's your final message to everyone.
It's your final expression of life.
Yeah.
So talk about, if you would, just some last pieces of advice for those of us who are going to, listen to this podcast and say, wow, what a great idea. This is something I really need to do. But it's a little overwhelming to get started, and we're all busy and running around. So can we talk about first baby steps in the direction of having a bucket binder?
Absolutely. I think really just, I think the most essential elements are probably the financial documents and, the important paper, like, your birth certificate and all of that, where to find those things. So even if you just start with that, printing out something from your, printing out a bank statement, putting it in there, where are your life insurance policies, what are the benefits you're receiving? Even just, typing or writing out a list of what accounts you have and where they can be found. I mean, that's really just a good starting place. So I would say, you can always expand it into, the more personal side, but really just the real practical aspects of your finances, I think is the most important. And your, if you do have a will or, an advance directive and that type of thing, those are important documents people are going to need as well. So either slipping them in or letting them know where those can be found.
I love that this really addresses sort of the practical aspects of, life and death, but also some real emotional aspects about what do I want to leave? How do I want to, gift this to my loved ones, my legacy. There's just so many parts to this.
Absolutely. And one last thing that we haven't really touched on yet, but technology has added another level to this as well. So letting people know your passwords or where to find your passwords so they can log into your online accounts is also an important point.
That's great advice. Yeah. I can't even remember my passwords.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I recommend using some type of password keeper. There are online services that are very secure, that keep all of your passwords in them. And then you only need to let people know, the one password to get into that, and then they would have access to everything. But also, can they unlock your phone? Can they log into your computer? They're probably going to need to do that. So, leaving that information is important as well.
That sounds very important. Where can people find out more about you, Carrie, and the services that you offer?
Sure. The best way is on my website, which is prettyneatsolutions.com. Yeah.
And you've been teaching this class, the bucket binder class? I
have, and I gave everyone a pat on the back for attending a class about death and paperwork. Because that's really the two things nobody wants to deal with.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but the fact that people did show up and are interested in this, I think just speaks to the fact that, this is an important topic, and people are recognizing that, there are preparations that need to be made. So I was happy to see that.
And I think it's really wonderful that you bring your sense of humor to this.
I think we have to, right? This is so serious. We got to laugh about it a little bit.
Thanks so much for talking to us about this. It's really important, and I'm hoping and I'm confident that our listeners will go out to their local office supply store, get a binder, and just start. I think it's something. Once you start, it might, be easier to continue adding to it.
Yes, just start having the conversations with your loved ones. That's really the important part.
That's great advice. Thanks so much, Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.